Hello everyone and welcome to Mountain Lake Journal. I'm Tom Halleck. This week the mayor of Plattsburgh looks ahead to the future, saying the city's in good financial shape and looking to develop the Saranac River, its waterfront, and beaches on Lake Champlain.
It's great to be here.
At the yearly Chamber of Commerce State of the City, Town and County breakfast this past week, Chris Rosenquist says the city has reached a milestone in tax revenue. And that has helped raise millions of dollars to fix up streets and sidewalks and will help expand the city's parks and green spaces and offer residents free broadband.
So 2022, what are we looking at? Progress. The city of Plattsburgh is in a fantastic financial situation. We have a general fund balance of about $6 million. For the first time, our taxable value has broken $1 billion.
And the mayor joins us now. Welcome, it's good to see you.
Hey Tom, how are you?
I'm well. We just heard some of your presentation from the past week at the annual Chamber of Commerce State of the City, Town and County Forum. You said overall the city's in good financial shape.
Fantastic. Last year we added just over $2 million to the general fund. This closing of this past year, 21, we added another $1.083 million to the general fund. Right now we're sitting on about $6 million in our general fund, which makes up about 24% of the overall general fund. We're in excellent financial shape. Looking back several years, we've been credit where credit's due. We've been building up to this point to really tuck into some investment projects. And again, I spoke a little bit about that and at that event.
And you outlined some of them. $1.5 million to go into the parks and green spaces. $2 million for a broadband network within the city.
That's right. Last year when we talked about the boat basin and the marina and a lot of the initiatives that we wanted to take, a lot of the public outcry was, well, why can't you take care of the things that we got? And that's what we're doing. $1.5 million invested into our parks and green space, which a lot of our parks, if you're out at our parks, you'll see things need to be repaired, things need to be fixed. So we're looking at investing about that much money into parks and green space and trails, including our trail systems. And then also taking a real hard look at municipal broadband in the city of Plattsburgh. And we hear broadband in Adirondacks and access to broadband where there isn't any. But what we're talking about is securing our own municipal broadband for the city of Plattsburgh, and then piggybacking on top of that to potentially provide free city-wide Wi-Fi. That's the opportunity that we see. Not only that, but then servicing the low-income families, people who are in subsidized housing or public housing, that rather than making them choose between one bill versus another, providing that opportunity for free Wi-Fi so that their kids can get an education, that they can do job searching and they can work from home.
And you talked a lot about housing. You talked about the housing crisis in the city, and it is a crisis. You actually have the stats to back that up as far as available housing.
100%, and we've talked about this. Now, this is not something new. We've talked about this. We've talked about the concern for the lack of housing, for the low vacancy and availability rates that we have in the city of Plattsburgh. We just did a housing commission study in the city that clearly outlines not only the availability of housing, which hovers around 3% of all housing that becomes available, but that the housing that is available compared to federal averages for rental rates, we're like 30% above what you would typically find in rental rates nationwide. But when it comes down to when we talk about job creation, when we talk about families moving into our area, we can have all the jobs in the world, we can have all the nice parks in the world, but if we don't have some place for people to live, it's the point's moot. So that's where we're at. We're about 10 years behind the ball on this one. We really should have been working on solving our housing issues or foreseeing some housing issues about 10 years back, but here we are. So we need to do something pretty drastic and pretty aggressive about that.
And you've talked about changing the zoning and planning codes to help. How would that help?
Part of it is the zoning and planning have got to go hand in hand with our comprehensive master plan, and that's a plan that we're just wrapping up. Yep. It's in its final stages. It's with the advisory committee. They're reviewing it. They're looking at it. But what comes down to is this notion that we don't have developable land, and I will say that that's just inaccurate. We have land. The concern that we have is that it's infill development, which is much more difficult than finding a parcel of property out in the middle of nowhere, bringing utilities to that, and then building from the ground up, which a lot of people say is urban sprawl. What we're looking at are the opportunities for infill development, like the Durkee Streets, like the Harborsides, places that we see that are vacant in the city of Plattsburgh, that when we look at who can develop it, it's a much more difficult development perspective. But with the change of zoning and planning laws that are consistent with the changes of the comprehensive master plan, we really are looking at facilitating an ease of development in those large, high density structures rather than single family, double family homes.
Of course, there's one on the drawing board with Durkee Street, 100
Sure.
apartments. That's certainly a project that has been on the drawing board for a number of years now, and appears to be on hold given the latest court ruling.
Yeah, and it seems like it will be on hold for quite some time, and we got to come back to the drawing board on this to see where the city needs to land on this, where we have projects as part of the existing DRI projects that are kind of tied up into this, the Riverwalk, tying the Riverwalk into the Saranac River Trail that we just completed last year. As well as a Durkee Street redesign. So we have, the city of Plattsburgh, we have to take a step back and figure out, well, what are our priorities here? Where do we need to be for future development? I will say this, every single person, the majority of people that I've spoken to have said that the best use of that parking lot is not parking. It is for development. It's just, what is the development? What's the right development? What's the right project for that space? And that is really what we need to start answering in partnership with the prime folks and in partnership with the state, because the state's holding some of the cash on this one. Mm-hmm. So we do need to figure out, well, how do we, what's the approach that we're going to take, and what are the next steps on that one? And
you've talked to Prime and the state this week after the court ruling. Are they planning to move ahead with the project?
Yeah, I can't speak much to Prime. We had one brief conversation with them to figure out, hey, are you, where you all are at on this? I can't really speak to them. We also talked to the state about their funds and about the monies that is allocated for this specific project. And I also have to remind people that the monies that are allocated to this project are not with the city of Plattsburgh. They have always been with the state in partnership and in contract with a developer. And so they have to work out their model, the state and Prime, or the developer has to work out their model, while on the other side, the city of Plattsburgh has to figure out how are we going to develop the Riverwalk, which is part of the DRI, as well as the Durkee Street redesign as well.
And you've had other projects that have been part of the DRI at the Strand and the Betty Little Arts Park.
That's right.
So there have been other components that have moved ahead, but this obviously was the centerpiece and remains the centerpiece.
And that was part of the thing. The biggest chunk of cash, the $4 million, went into the Durkee Street development. But in terms of housing, we had the downtown grant program, which developed second floor apartment and improved storefront facades. And that also has helped with some of the housing issues, but still, it's just not enough. Like I said, we go back to the comprehensive master plan combined with zoning and planning law changes to really facilitate an opportunity for developers.
And you talk about the Saranac River Trail, developing that right down to Harborside. Right. You have developers interested in looking at Harborside?
Yeah, well, a while back we had a hotel that came to the city of Plattsburgh, provided an RFP for development of Harborside. Right now what we're trying to accomplish is really defining the best use of Harborside, combining a number of studies, as well as the Harborside master plan that's currently underway as well as part of the funding.
And is that hotel still in the works?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we're still trying to work through and work out as we progress through this Harborside master plan. Right now, it's just a matter of looking at a number of studies, consolidating a number of studies, getting public engagement on this one, and then figuring out, well, what are the best uses for these spaces that are part of Harborside, including the Saranac River. And I think that's crucial for us to understand that this Harborside master plan includes a section of the Saranac River that comes up through the city, through downtown, and meets up with the Saranac Street Bridge.
At the Chamber breakfast that day, you talked about how, yes, the beach, City Beach, gets so much attention, but you are potentially looking at some of the other waterfront properties to potentially develop?
Yeah, and we have to, and I think that's the pitfall that we sometimes get into when we talk about waterfront in the city of Plattsburgh. The beach is an easy thing to invest in, and we should continue to, and we will continue to invest in the beach as we did last year. But when you talk about Sailors Point Park and Sailors Beach, those are also opportunities that when we look at this $1.5 million investment into our parks and green space, we have to consider those as crucial parks and crucial elements to the entire mix of waterfront and our park system.
And you talked about City Beach. There were improvements made there, a lot of improvements from this past year. There is the study out there, a $75 million plan that would really renovate the beach dramatically, put in an amphitheater. Is that something you think is in the city's future?
I absolutely do think it's in the city's future, and again, it goes back to having conversations about the crate. Not an easy conversation, but we've got to talk about that.
At the chamber breakfast, you basically said it's time for the crate to come down.
It's time for the crate to come down. I think most people that understand the nuances of the Crate Center and how it came to be, where it's at now, and the future of that building, plus where the rest of that plan is leading us, really focuses on the removal of the crate. It's unfortunate, but that is really where things are at. We
just too costly to fix up?
Well, in 2016, as part of the waterfront feasibility study, it said it was going to be $4 million to fix up, just to fix it up, versus $1 million to tear it down. Cost of materials, cost of supplies, cost of doing business, even just naturally increases over time, but we haven't even done the analysis of what this new inflationary impact is going to create if we're talking about just repairing it. Where I think the city of Plattsburgh needs to be is facilitating and helping support other businesses, private entities, or even nonprofits that want to grow that area of expertise and want to provide that type of service. But I just think at this point, the city of Plattsburgh trying to re-enter into some type of recreation program or build facilities for recreation, it's just not where we need to be right now.